We had another fantastic UFC card the other night, and I'm here to do the recap. You might hear some guitar playing in the background. That is my roommate, housemate, whatever you want to call it. He's doing a little bit of guitar work, but it shouldn't be too bad. Anyways, this was a hell of a rebound from the UFC because obviously we're coming off that UFC London card, which was not very good and then was compromised by the 15-second injury to Tom Aspinall at the end, which robbed us of the main event, the most anticipated fight on the card, obviously. And then, of course, there was the Ortega versus Rodriguez. There we go. I blanked on the name for a second. But that fight card, which I actually fairly enjoyed, but obviously, of course, had a similar ending with the dislocated shoulder and the end there, which was obviously not amazing either. So, we were coming off for 2 weeks straight of not very good events, and this fight card, it pretty much delivered. I mean, not that every fight was scintillating. There was some undercard stuff that was not great, but I think was also at the same time reasonably revealing. And there was also some very, very good stuff on the undercard. Just as a quick summary of the undercard, Drew Dober versus Rafael Alves was very, very fun. Hamdi Adel Wahad versus Dante Mays was sloppy as all hell. So I draw short of calling it truly good, but it was entertaining. Drakkar Klose and Rafa Garcia was fine. Michael Morales versus Adam Fugit was actually quite a bit more competitive than I expected, which is nice. Edwards and Kim was a bit meh. The end of Nick Mariano versus Ihor Portera was pretty good. Koshi versus Blood Diamond is probably a fight I never want to watch again, but that was the only really, really, really stinker of the bunch. I actually missed the prelim or the main prelim of Alex Morono versus Matt Semmelsberger, which was quite good. And then the main card, of course, largely ended in finishes with the exception of the main event. It had interesting storylines really throughout. So, all in all, it's a good card. And I can't really say that it was definitely worth the money. And I'm interested to see what the buy rate is. Because, of course, unfortunately, Amanda Nunes has historically not necessarily been a pay-per-view star. I think she should be. I think she's probably the best female fighter in MMA history so far. I do believe that women's MMA has a long way to go in terms of developing the depth, the high-end talent, and everything before all the pieces finally fall into place. But for the time being, Nunes is what we got, and she's doing the job. Let's talk about that main event fight, Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes. I'm just kind of curious right now. I'm gonna pull up MMA decisions for the fight because I kind of want to know how many 10-8s there were. I personally thought only the second round was particularly worthy of a 10-8. It looks like Sal D'Amato agreed with me, which does send shivers down my spine. Douglas Crosby also gave a 10-8 in the fifth round, and 10-9s all around from Jacob Montalvo, which actually is not the worst card. I said this on Twitter in regards to this fight, that the second round was probably a 10-8, but it was actually the round in which, in many ways, Pena actually got the best of her offense in. So it's kind of a weird one. Like, she got dropped 3 times. So if you want to call that a 10-8, I am not going to stop you, and I agree. But it was kind of weird that it was actually the round where Pena got the most work, the most quality done over the course of the fight, actually, really. Where, like, Nunes' defense was actually beaten in some ways. I hate to be, like, overly reductive, but because, Nunes made some obvious adjustments in this fight. She was a little bit more counter heavy. She was a little bit more prepared for Pena to come rushing in and to smash her and knock her down 4 times in the first 2 rounds. Although that first knockdown, it was kind of more like, I don't know what to call it, because I mean, Pena went down, but I think it was more of a product of like the body positioning that Pena had at the time of the contact that put her down, rather than like a really powerful, like the round 2 triple knockdown was much more impactful than the first round one that she got. And part of it was, I think, Pena also not necessarily replicating what worked in the first fight, because by Nunes' own admission, a big part of what got her tired was the scrambling sequences in the first fight with Pena. And Pena didn't really force scrambles in this fight. She was very proactive from her back. Lots of armbar attempts, couple triangle attempts, even omoplatas. But it was a submission activity as opposed to forcing scrambles that seemed to tax Nunes's gas tank in a way that defending submissions does not. So that was an interesting wrinkle. And the third factor, I think, is that Nunes, it was labeled as excuses at the time that she had a knee injury, she had COVID, she had illness, and essentially that her camp for the first fight was not very good. And this is, I think, actually kind of an annoyance in the MMA community, is that we want fighters to take fights, to not pull out, to not cause a fight that we're looking forward to fall through the cracks, which is fine. But then when a fighter goes to extra lengths to stay on a card, anything they say ends up being an excuse. This is not to say that like all reasons provided for a loss are infinitely valid, infinitely change how we should treat the fight, and so on. For example, there was the famous Tito Ortiz, I got a cracked skull. And it's just kind of like, okay, we'll prove it. And then there's the Conor McGregor thing with the leg, and how, okay, let's say there was a past leg injury, but you're blitzing in power kicks against the guy, that's only going to hurt the leg further. And when it breaks, is that really anyone but your own fault? Sort of thing. But it does appear that Nunes definitely just was not at 100% for the first fight. Which is what I thought, because despite the fact that the narrative, and in many ways it's the correct narrative, because I think that Nunes is one of Nunes's bigger Achilles heels as a fighter, probably is honestly that I don't think she has the greatest of gas tanks. I think that there is something to be said for the fact that she's faded against Valentina Shevchenko, against Sarah D'Alelio, against Kat Zingano, and of course against Juliana Pena. But she faded against Pena much quicker than against the other ones, and with notably less effort exerted. And I'm left with the assumption that that was probably a three-pronged thing. One, the bad camp. Two, maybe she had lost some of the hunger, some of the burning desire to train. And three, age. That's always a factor in any decline of a fighter, is unfortunately it's going to be age. I'm not saying that Nunes is old and we should be playing the retirement party or whatever. I think she has a couple of good years left in her. But, you know, there's a difference between, you know, as someone who's just 35 years of age, there's something different about being 35 than there is about being 25, for example. And, you know, this is from someone who doesn't exist at a high level of athletic activity. To the fight itself, I don't have a ton to say, actually. Nunes instigated very, very, very solid counters. Took a while to get going. The first 2 minutes of this fight was fairly lethargic. And then Nunes landed a nice uppercut, lead uppercut. Probably one of the better strikes of the fight that didn't get a knockdown. The counter started to show up. Good counter right. She was kneeling this really good counter right hook that realistically Pena never seemed to have a great answer for. Got the knockdown, like I said, in the first round. And then, Pena changed up and tried to start changing how the fight was going with some of her own more aggressive, more wild stuff, which it worked, but also opened her up for a lot of pounding. And that was basically the second round. Every time Pena would dash in, super wild, super rough, she would get clocked, put down, 3 knockdowns in the round. It was a 10-8, like I said. But at the same time, it was a round where Pena did a lot of damage. And then the third round, kind of the same without the knockdowns. Again, Nunes clearly hurting her with counters. But those rushes from Pena were allowing her to land some things. And then Nunes got it to the ground, got some top position. We had the omoplata big attempt there by Pena, which Nunes got out of. And ended up busting her up with elbows from top. So now you got a bleeding Pena. She's lost 3 rounds. She comes back out. And then for the 4th and the 5th round, it was a lot of Nunes taking Pena down. Yes, there were some arm bars. Yes, there were some omoplatas attempted. There was a triangle, I think, in there as well. There was a little bit of back control time for Nunes as she tried to submit Pena. Couldn't do. And in the end, takes the win. Whatever you scored it, 50 to 40, 50 to 40, 45, 50 to 44, 50 to 43. These are all, I think, not super reproachable scores. So the judges did a good job on an obvious to score fight. There you go. And that's really all there is to that fight. Obviously, could you do the trilogy match? Perhaps. The only problem is that I'm left with the feeling that I had going into the first fight, and I do agree going into the second fight, that at 100%, at ideal conditions, I don't think Pena offers a ton to Nunes. This is not to say she's a bad fighter by any means. She's incredibly tough. The fact that she took the punishment she did in this fight, did not give up, did not get finished, is incredibly impressive. She also kept trying to force things. It wasn't just one of those, I'm hanging on to survive, I want to see the final belt. No, she was trying to win throughout this whole thing. But I still have the same reservations about her to fight a tremendously smart fight, because something I really probably should have brought up more before this fight was that in the first fight, Pena came out with this, I'm going to call it the Valley plan, because this is something she's been doing since she started training with Valley Flow, as opposed to Sick Jitsu, where it's kind of, to borrow from the Heavy Hands podcast, capital T technical. And she was getting destroyed. So her adjustment was to go crazy. And in this one, her adjustment again was to go crazy. I'm not really sure we're going to see more out of her. So unless you can guarantee me that Nunes is going to have another bad outing, another bad night, another bad camp, I don't know. That being said, what the heck else is there at this weight class to really do? In all seriousness, what else is on offer? It was a good fight, though. It's a good fight. Now, people are calling it the best fight in women's MMA history. I really recommend going back and watching the entire career of Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Or if you just mean biggest moment, go back and watch Holly Holm knock out Ronda Rousey again. This fight doesn't belong in those annals. It's a good fight. It's one of the best that it's one of the best that Nunes has had, but I don't even think it's the best that Nunes has had. So there you go. And of course, the other options on the table, like I said, okay, are we going to do Valentina versus Nunes again? That does kind of feel like the only thing really on the table outside of I don't know. Does anyone really want to see Nunes versus Ketlin Vieira? It's a weird place. Co-main event was the interim flyweight title match. Wasn't angry at the fight. That being said, was kind of angry at the circumstances that led us to an interim title. Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara-France, and I was wrong in some degrees with this fight. I thought that Moreno actually really had Kai Kara-France's number, and that didn't seem to be the entire case. I mean, obviously, he did finish him in the third round, so there is that. Big body kick, follow up with flurry of punches to get the TKO or KO. Stop it. What did they term it? Did they go TKO or KO? They went KO. All right. Tapology says KO / TKO. This doesn't help me. But late in the third round. But I mean, the first two rounds were very pick'em. Which, isn't altogether wrong on my part because it's not like I thought Moreno would blow him out of the water. I just thought that the longer this fight goes, the more it would favor Moreno as opposed to Kai Kara-France. That Kai Kara-France just didn't have long-term nuanced answers if he couldn't finish Moreno. And there's some truth to that, but like at the same time, Kai Kara-France was doing a pretty good job there. He was stopping takedowns when they were coming. He was landing some good counters of his own. It was kind of the night of the counter in a lot of ways in the two main card ones. But Moreno, the longer this fight was going, was starting to find a lot. Like the second round, I think was a great shaping of this fight because Moreno at the end of the first round had started to cut off the cage and started to put Kai Kara-France back into the fence. And he continued this in the second round. Granted, failing with the takedowns a couple times. Eating some counters, eating some good low kicks, but he was getting some good combinations in there of his own. He was winning the exchanges. And it took Kai Kara-France getting, maybe in the last minute, like really kind of like finally landing some good counters, forcing Moreno back into an open space fight. But then Moreno started stalking him down again. And that essentially I thought was the main problem for Kai Kara-France is that when they were in open space, he would have success. He would land some stinging counters. He would have some success in terms of volume and so on. They were very close exchanges, but once Moreno started to cut him off, started to hurt him back into the cage, that was when Moreno was starting to really punish him and mixing and felt comfortable mixing in takedowns to keep Kara-France off balance. And then you get to the third round, and again, Kai Kara-France gets, a really good start. He busts Moreno up, forces this incredibly ugly looking spinning back fist that like worked in the sense that it made Kai Kara-France back off from like probably the best moment he was having in the fight. And Moreno seemed like he was in trouble. But then Moreno turned it around again. He turned up the pace, started to again cut the cage off, control where the fight was happening. And then honestly, Kai Kara-France goes for this, like, I thought really, really, really ill-advised takedown here late in the third round. And mostly because I don't think Kai Kara-France going for takedowns against Moreno in general is the best advised path to victory. And on the separation, Moreno just unloads on him. Boom, 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 boom. Then the body kick comes in, the flurry, the finish. We're done. Boom. In terms of like the final readout here, Moreno's interim champion. They had the face off with Davidson Figueiredo. He apologized for some of the trash talk he had said. He wants to Figueiredo wants to fight him in Brazil. That's not happening. I said this a couple of podcasts ago when people were asking about Aaron Bronstetter asking Dana White about whether the UFC would come to Canada. And of course, Dana made it a vaccine question, which is kind of ridiculous because Abu Dhabi, where Fight Island is, does have vaccine requirements. And Singapore, where they went for one of the more recent pay-per-views, the Alessandro pay-per-view, also has vaccine requirements. And in a nutshell, in both cases, it's just simply that there was enough local money to make it happen. Because there are enough vaccinated fighters to put on a card. Like, that's not a problem. Yes, you have some relatively prominent fighters who refuse to get vaccinated. You have some complete jalapas who refuse to get vaccinated. Tony Ferguson may be the king amongst them. But you do have enough vaccinated fighters to actually pull this off. Most of your European contingent are vaccinated. Most of your Canadian contingent are vaccinated. And even amongst the American contingent, a fairly large percentage are vaccinated. The vaccine mandates aren't going to keep you out. What is going to keep you out is the fact that right now the UFC is getting a lot of money for hosting these pay-per-views where they host them. A tremendous amount of money. And a place like Brazil doesn't really have the money to do that. And a place like Canada, to go back to that previous one, is quite simple. None of the major cities, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, which have the money, but frankly don't have the need. They all have a relatively thriving local economy, and they don't require the political clout because nobody cares. Like Canada has many hardcore MMA fans, but you will not get a political win by getting the UFC to come to town. There was no pickup after Ontario finally legalized MMA, for example, and the UFC came to Toronto. Like there's no plus to justify the investment, and that's why we won't see it, and that's why we won't see them in Brazil. And that's really it. I mean, it was a touching moment. It was kind of nice. It seemed like the UFC was. Some people have stated like the whole thing with Figueiredo and Moreno in the cage is like kind of staged. And I think it was more that pretty early on in Moreno's speech, it was pretty obvious that he wasn't going to make this an ugly moment. A Ken Shamrock, Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell, or Chael Sonnen moment in the cage. That this was going to be something fairly respectful and something that they can build off of. And I'm sure that they wanted, like, I'm sure Figueiredo was there and highly on the broadcast to be shown and to hype up the winner of this fight versus him as a possibly big fight in the future. But at the end of the day, I think it was somewhat naturally occurring. And I enjoyed it. Moreno and Figueiredo. The awkward handshake, I'm assuming that has to do with Davey Figgs' injured hand. But I'm looking forward to that fight. It's probably the only time in UFC history I've wanted a quadrilogy fight. And I do feel bad about someone we're going to talk about later. That's Alexander Pantoja. Because by all means, he should be getting a title shot. But under these circumstances, I don't think it's the thing that makes the most sporting sense. And I don't think it's the thing that makes the most promotional sense. So there you go. As for Kai Kara-France, where does he go after this? I don't know. Like the problem with flyweight right now is that you got the top three. You've got Figueiredo, Moreno, Pantoja, and they're quite a ways above the rest. Then you have Kai Kara-France and like Askar Askarov, and they're quite a bit ahead of the rest, and they've already fought each other. So I don't know. Just put Kai Kara-France in there with someone who's like at that third tier, which is most of the division, who's on a bit of a streak, and is trying to go into the second tier. Have them fight. That's the biggest thing. Might be like to do like Mano Cop, but I can't. I'm not recalling off the top of my head if Kai Kara-France and Mano Cop have fought before. They were active in the same region for a long, long time. They did not. So, or he has a loss to Denan Batgari back at Legends FC 11, like way, way back in the day. I didn't even realize this. Back in 2013. You could do a rematch of that and get like Kai Kara-France get back his win. It's sort of Chuck Liddell, Jeremy Horn moment, almost. Moving on further down the card, there's not a lot to say about the fight between Derek Lewis and Sergey Pavlovich. We thought that this fight would go either that Pavlovich would do a really good job and win the fight, or he would do a really good job and then get caught by Derek Lewis, or he would just run into Derek Lewis's power. And essentially, we got the first option with a somewhat controversial stoppage. I'll talk about the stoppage, I guess, more than the fight, really. Essentially, this was throw bombs. Lewis gets hurt. Referee stops the fight. um, Lewis popped right back up after the stoppage, and that has led to a lot of people calling this a bad stoppage. I don't think it is. So here's the thing. I never judge a referee stoppage based on the aftermath, because that's not what you're stopping at. You stop the fight before the aftermath. It's the things before the stoppage that we're looking at. And in that case, Derek Lewis got hurt, very legitimately, and face planted down with the like sort of pancake physics, if it as it were. And that normally is a stoppage. But that normally is a stoppage because that normally indicates somebody is out. And if Lewis was not out, the body language told us that he was, and there's nothing else the referee has to work with. The fact that he did appear fine afterwards, clear-eyed, focused, articulate, at least articulate in the manner of Derek Lewis, suggests that, yes, maybe this could have gone on, but I can't hate on the stoppage. And it's a little bit of a shame to see a lot of Twitter doing it. Afterwards, I didn't like the afterwards stuff. Joe Rogan addressing the crowd and so on. Joe Rogan, by the way, kind of annoying on the night. Just there was this. There was some tremendously biased commentary at various points. There was the crack about Moreno versus Kai Kara-France being for the real flyweight title, in his opinion, which is ridiculous. Like, don't get me wrong. You can think Moreno won the third fight with Davey Figgs, and I have no problem with that. But Moreno versus Kai Kara-France over like something involving Davey Figgs for the title, it's disingenuous. And like it or not, like Joe Rogan speaks with authority to a large segment of the fan base. So when he says something dumb, it does actually kind of matter. Pantoja just absolutely carved through Alex Perez, and I don't know what to do with him now. Because he's in a spot where like he's unable to get a title shot in all likelihood. He absolutely deserves one. So does he just sit on the shelf waiting? I thought he would win this fight quite handily over Perez, to be clear. But even by my standards, I thought this would be way more competitive. Pantoja found some success early, crashed into the clinch, got the back, got the standing rear naked choke, and yeah, there's not a lot else to say. And my belief in Alex Perez is just so kind of low because he is maybe the most bully-centric fighter I think I've ever seen. Like, one, he's a massively overcutting flyweight in many ways. He's had many weight problems. Let's see here. I want to say he lost 2 fights due to just not making weight in the manner that you should. There was one against Matt Schnell. And maybe it's just the one. They did book Kai Kara-France and him a while back. You could revisit that fight. I have no problem with that. It's kind of lazy booking to like book people coming off of the same fight card, but like flyweight is such a small enclosed ecosystem that like, what are you gonna do? Especially at the top. So you could do that, but I don't know. I'm not a big believer in him. Like, he's a strong guy. He's got a lot of physical attributes, but like as soon as something goes wrong in the fight, he seems to just cave. And that's a hard thing to pick for again at flyweight, because I don't think it works against the high level fighters in that division. There's too much. There's a very little quantity in that division, but the quality is very, very good, and also the style of fighting tends to be higher paced and transitional. There tends to be ebbs and flows to a fight at flyweight, regardless of who's fighting. So I don't think Perez will win a lot of high-level fights. We had Magomed Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith. This was the opener for the main card. Well, I am still a little bit surprised that like you could find Anthony Smith as like in the plus 500s as an underdog in the betting lead up to this. He lost obviously, so I mean like it looks fine. Whatever. He ended up injuring his ankle and or possibly breaking his leg. We heard both. And that more or less ended the fight. But like like the first round was pretty close until until Smith kind of couldn't get up, and yeah, the second round when Anthony Smith goes out there and goes for a takedown and then pulls guard, I knew it was kind of done at that point. And this was another case where the finish, I think, what the finish wasn't necessarily a ton of damage or a ton of like you stop the fight moment for Dan Hardy, but it was kind of obvious that when Anthony Smith tried to get his legs under him and tried to explode back up when Ankalaev had his back, that the leg wasn't working. And this is 205 against a really dangerous foe. You're not going to fight through that. I have no problem with the stoppage. Ankalaev gets a title shot. Smith gets some time off to heal up the injury. That's kind of really all that happens. Alex Morono versus Matt Semmelsberger. This went like I thought it was going to go. I thought Moreno won the first 2 rounds. Just a more nuanced ability to fight. He was landing some excellent counters. He was efficient with his volume. Like he wasn't having to out-throw Semmelsberger to outland Semmelsberger. That's never a good place to be. Probably the thing that summarized the fight really was Semmelsberger would throw this kind of, I don't want to call it lazy because it's not lazy, but this wide hook, this looping hook that he would throw. And Morono would intercept it with an arm block or whatever, diffuse it, and then just use it to pummel Semmelsberger. And they would do that sequence a number of times. And I think it just showed the whole, thing there. And I mean, okay, Semmelsberger ended the second round pretty well. He ended up on top despite, facing off with an armbar. But Morono took those 2 rounds. The only interesting thing here is at the start of the third round, Semmelsberger gets his eye checked by the doc. Doc goes out. Dan Mergliotta calls the doc back in to take another look, actually. And they still go on. But anyways, and then Semmelsberger has his best moment of the fight, really. He goes in there, hits a big ass knee, knocks Morono down, gets top position, looks very game, very happy to scramble. They end up back on their feet, and gets another big knee. And then there's this hilarious moment where at some point in this, Semmelsberger had lost his mouthpiece, and Tandan offers the mouthpiece back to Morono. Morono's like, it's not my mouthpiece, it's his mouthpiece. And they go back into it. Semmelsberger, I think, won the round, although one judge didn't agree. Let me see if I can figure out maybe a reason for that. Maybe there was. Let's see here. I guess Morono apparently did end up out 6-striking him, 29-26. Go figure. I thought Semmelsberger had much better strikes, though. I have to say that. I feel like that is probably the case. But I guess it's not a terrible one. But I thought those 2 big knees that Semmelsberger landed were the biggest strikes he had landed in the fight, and possibly actually were bigger than most of what Morono had landed. But of course, it wouldn't have mattered. Morono did win this fight either way. That eye was swollen shut, basically. I'd imagine he was pretty much blind at that point. And I don't really know what to do with either of these guys. In the case of Morono, there's the problem of, like, he still is one of the least physically imposing fighters at welterweight to have been there for a long time and made a very good run. And that always complicates, like, where do I want to go with him as matchmaking wise. And then for Semmelsberger, it's kind of the opposite problem. Like, I think he really does have all the physical attributes and some reasonably good technical ideas to be a very good fighter. But at the same time, I don't think there's enough nuance to his game. And the whole looping hook getting blocked constantly is a great example of just what I mean by that. Is that Morono, probably through film study, managed to figure out, okay, this is what he likes to do. I can completely short circuit that and turn that into my own offense. And that's the problem with Semmelsberger's game, is that I think it needs more diversity. I think it needs more problem-solving ideas and just in general more depth. And of course, it's interesting to think about who would present the best options. I didn't do a full matchmaking dive in on this one. My apologies for it, but I also don't have a lot of great ideas for anybody on the card except for like the main card, and the main card is like it's what's going to happen versus what I even think should happen. Drew Dalber versus Rafael Alves. There was a weird bit where Alves wanted to stop to get his toe tape adjusted. Anyways, Dober won the first round. Dober won the second round, essentially. Busier, good counters. Again, the day of the counters. Good footwork in general by Dober. Alves was getting clipped. Alves ended up jumping a ghillie in the first round, which I kind of expected. Although I will say it, he bailed on it and got top position off of it, which was interesting. But he didn't do anything with the top position really to steal the round. I don't know, maybe somebody would have given it to him just because of that. But I thought he lost the striking exchanges pretty much throughout. There was an interesting moment at the end of the second round where Alves gets a thumb to the eye, pauses the action, emphatically pushes the doctor away to get the fight going again, and then does the if anyone's watched Sons of Anarchy, the Clay Morrow I have the fire of the Lord in me preacher bit he does in prison, where he's like, I can't sleep, I got the Lord in me. He basically did that physical interaction to end the round. With Dober doing his thing. It was weird. It was weird. And then in round 3, Alves goes for a spinning head kick. It partially lands, and then he decides to shoot. It doesn't work, and then we just kind of return to what we were before. Dober pressuring him in the cage, kind of like Morono versus Kai Kara-France. And then in a similar finish also, body shot. Shuts down Alves, and Dober's got himself another win. He talks about how afterwards that he literally turns fights down with boring fighters, which I actually have no problem with if you're not trying to make a title run. And at this point, I think Dober knows what he is. Dober is a middle of the rankings guy to stick on an undercard or maybe a fight night or main card and have a fun action fight. So I have absolutely no problem with him essentially choosing his own opponents. And then for Alves, same concerns going forward. There is every reason to think that he physically can compete at a very, very, very high level. He has creativity, he has explosiveness, he has speed, he has power. But at the same time, he seems to be a guy who can be at least limited, if not paralyzed by pressure. And he did look tired after round 1. Now, he seemed to get a second win in round 2 and round 3, but he got tired in what was a not especially high-paced first round. If we look at the box score, let's see here. First round. Yeah, we're talking about 22 SIG strikes landed and 30 total strikes landed, plus 1 takedown. Actually, they've got it 11 on 6 strikes. Actually, I guess if you gave Alves the first round, I actually think that'd be okay. But like not by any means a high rate of work, and that seemed to do it in him. Maybe it's the grappling. I don't know, but yeah, I hate to toot my own horn. I don't really, but kind of went a lot like I thought it would. That like, yes, Alves would have his moments. Yes, Alves would be the physically dangerous fighter, but that Dober would have the long-term, nuanced responses to everything and will get the job done. Weirdest fight on the night: Dontel Mays versus Hamdi Adel Wahad. Also, my first loss of the night. The only other one is I picked Derek Lewis. This fight was just weird, and I can only break it down by like saying all the weird shit. Hamdi hurt Mays with a punch to the armpit. And the Olympic wrestler Hamdi knocked down Mays in the first round, won the round. There was a lot of grinding against cage otherwise. And then in round 2, this is a weird one. Like, I thought Mays, taking emotion out of it, Mays won the second round. Getting frustrated with Mays fighting incredibly dumb, including doing like this Ram style takedown attempt to put him on his back, is frustrating as all hell. And I kind of want to give the round to Hamdi. Hamdi got his eye beat up. It got closed. I'm not really sure how well he could see. And then he went out and then still won the third round. He took Mays down a number of times. He was getting ground and pound done. He was being active. There was a rather bullshit stand up with about like 40 seconds to go, and that gave Mays time to do some of the weirdest jumping, I'm trying to hit you with 3 different limbs shit I've ever seen. And yeah, that was the fight. And Hamdi won a split decision. I'm wondering what rounds the judge who scored it for Mays actually had it, because it was Judge Seth Fuller. He gave it the third round. I can't really agree with that. Like, Mays had a good Mays had a weird and fun last 40 seconds, but otherwise, don't get me wrong, I'm not like top position wins fights or anything, but I'm not sure what effective damage Dontel Mays did to override the fact that he was controlled for most of the round. Like, that's the thing. And again, I have to say this. Hamdi was throwing. Hamdi was doing damage. I mean, this is heavyweight, people. When you're on top of someone and you're throwing punches and you weigh 240, 250, 260 pounds, it's damaging. I thought this was an incredibly good debut for Hamdi Abdel Wahad. Dude fought through a busted up eye, fought through the fact that he doesn't yet seem to actually be that comfortable in the cage. No, like he did everything you could ask for him. He showed off the wrestling. He showed off what would happen when he doesn't have the wrestling. Like, he actually knocked down Mays with striking. He was effective on the feet. This was a very good fight for him. And for Dontel Mays, get a clue. Because, my lord, I said this in the breakdown, Mays just does so much dumb shit. And that was highlighted lovely. If you want to understand the Dontel Mays dumb shit, just go back and watch the second round. It was pretty bad. Anyways, Drakkar Klose versus Rafa Garcia. This was way more competitive than I thought it was. Garcia had some answers, but at the end of the day, Klose was just kind of getting the job done. He was able to cut the cage off at times. He was able to largely just kind of outland him, do his thing. I gave Rafa the second round, but that was about it. Judges agreed with a 29-28 overall. Not really much to talk about. It's a fine fight. But it's nothing really to go back to. Drakkar Klose wants Tony Ferguson. It's not happening. Michael Morales versus Adam Fugit. This ended up being way more competitive than I think it probably should be. The issue, I think, with Fugit is that if you get him on late notice, or you get him at all, I'm not really sure he's easy to prepare for, because he's one of those classic, you would never teach someone to actually fight like this. But someone apparently has. Someone apparently has taught Adam Fugit how to fight like this. And I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. Morales seemed like he was trying out some stuff. Like, guy has a grappling based resume. Can't remember what it was. It has some achievements in wrestling, and they brought out that both of his parents are judo black belts, all that fun. And he mostly just struck with him. He mostly made this a boxing match. It worked. And at the end, he stopped him in the third round. Kid's got a lot of physical ability. It appears that he is developing skills and making himself a deeper, more nuanced fighter. That's scary. It's legitimately scary. I don't think he's there yet, but the ceiling seems incredibly high for Michael Morales. And I think this fight probably could have been over quicker if he had just wanted to get Phew out of there, as opposed to, I think, trying to work on some new stuff. He said something to that effect in the post-fight interview. And for Phew, there may be more of a future for him in the UFC than I originally thought when he was signed for this fight on short notice, because he is such a weird fighter that there is a threat to anyone against him. But at the same time, I have a hard time thinking about who I would pick him to beat. So there, that kind of boils down to what I have for him. Jiyoung Kim lost to Jocelyn Edwards. Essentially, Edwards outlanded her in every round, basically. The advanced her again. Kim supposedly has more reach, but like Edwards appears to be the longer fighter at all times. I liked Kim's defensive footwork, but it wasn't really leading to anything for the most part. It was just back away, make Edwards chase, and overextend with kicks and stuff. Maybe because she missed the weight, they were thinking that they could get her to gas. Maybe that was the game plan, like to give Edwards the first round, but make her slowly gas out. But I thought Kim won the second round with she showed a bit more aggression, kind of turned it up. I think she had her hurt a little bit. I believe Edwards still landed more, so I don't actually have a problem with the one judge that did give it to her. But was this a split? Oh, right. One judge gave this to Kim. Which judge was that? I meant to look this up. I legitimately Armstrong. Okay, what rounds did Armstrong give Kim? Gave Kim the first round? I completely forgot that I got mad about this on Twitter and thought that it was actually a really bad scoring job. Because Kim did nothing in the first round. She got landed 33-19 in 6 strikes, 39-23 in overall strikes. Like, someone thought that it was like a kind of a joke to give Kim the second round. I don't agree with that. I thought Kim did good work in the second round. But to give Kim the first round, wow. I thought live that it would be the third round that they gave Kim. And because Edwards had slowed down at that point. Like it was kind of just it was kind of a little bit of a nothing round. And Kim had some top position because Edwards hip tossed her in the third round, got crucifix mount. Kim survived when Edwards went for an armbar and got some top time, got back to her feet. I thought that maybe she edged that round, and she did not. Texas judging. What are you gonna do? 2 names got added to my list here, Mr. Armstrong and Mr. Fuller, in terms of judges that I don't trust. What is Armstrong's full name? Steve Armstrong. This is admittedly the first one that appears to be controversial. This is the first time he's been a dissenting split decision judge, according to MMA decisions since 2016, which was a Hideo Takura versus LC Davis fight. I don't blame you. That those two fighters basically equal a close fight because they both have no idea how to secure rounds. Anyways, this is 4 straight losses for Kim. She's probably going to get cut off this. It means very, very little for Edwards because she was fighting someone who routinely fights at 125. She took this on short notice, so she deserves a round of applause for that. Didn't make the weight, and didn't really show any fixes for the problems I think she has. Now, at the same time, I don't think this fight was set up to do that. I said this in my breakdown that Kim is entirely capable of fighting at a high pace, but usually lets you set the pace. So Edwards wasn't going to have to show off any new wrinkles or change or be better. And she wasn't. The wrestling did look a little sharper, I guess. Nick Mariano, who was an underdog for some reason when I put money down on him. I'm very happy about that because he got the win. It kind of went like I thought it would. There was a lot of inactivity early, but eventually Nick Mariano turned it up. I was calling him the Neg in my Twitter. Went out there. He started to hit some reasonable counter shots, rashing into the clinch, going for takedowns. Getting some ground and pound. Portera did throw up an armbar, but that was about it. He ended up giving up his back in the process, and did manage to get back up. So at least that was smart, but ended up getting taken down again. And then Nick Mariano, the weirdest moment of this fight was Nick Mariano on that second takedown or that mat return, whatever you want to call it, just stands over him with the kicks to the legs. And that's going to be a stand-up. So, like, you put all that effort into getting the fight to the ground and then just let it get back up. Mind you, it worked great because Portera gets back up on the feet and looks tired as shit. Still throwing power punches, throwing power leg kicks, but tired. So, Nick Mariano took that round, and then the second round was a display of Nick Mariano's terrible form, but also incredibly good shin because he got hit with some good shit. And Ihor kept getting tighter. And then, well, ended up against the cage, eating shots, mouthpiece flies out, referee stops the fight. And this kind of went like I thought it was. Portera is a physically imposing fighter, has a lot of danger, has a lot of theoretical power and stuff, but is a guy who hasn't fought anybody. Now, I may not think a tremendous amount about Nick Mariano. I think that his form is kind of awful. I think that his technical nuances, not great. But he has beaten some good fighters. Came out here, super tough. Does find answers, does adjust, and got the job done. And has good cardio. That's the other thing. I didn't know that Portera had bad cardio. I probably would have put more money against him if I did. Ryan Croce beat Blood Diamond. It was a more competitive fight than I honestly thought it would be. Blood Diamond showed some wrestling improvements, even if they are just like basic fundamentals. Still helps. Ryan Croce missed weight and then had no real explanation on it. Like Edwards, at least it was a late notice fight, and she had just fought a weight class up. I'm not sure what the deal with Ryan Croce missing weight. I wasn't impressed with him. I thought he won the fight, but at the same time, if I have to say I came out with a better impression of a fighter off of this fight, it was actually Blood Diamond. I still think he's going to lose in the UFC repetitively, but if you're sticking a gun to my head and saying which one of these fighters went from a D to a D plus or something, it's Blood Diamond. And like Koshi's game seems pretty limited, pretty basic, and he doesn't seem to he wasn't able to even really impose it at will on Blood Diamond. It's a bad sign. Anyways, that was the fight. Who got the bonuses? I haven't actually looked that up. My apologies. UFC 277 bonuses, please. Who got the juicy 50K that all the fighters are calling out for? Fight of the night, Brandon Moreno, Kai Kara France. Not a problem with that. Not a problem with that at all. And performance of the nights to Drew Dover and Alexander Pantoja. No real problems with that either, actually, to be honest. Pantoja definitely deserves one. I personally would have probably given it to Hamdi Abdel Wahad, in my opinion. Dude fought his fucking heart out. But I don't actually object to the Dover. So, there you go. Anyways, there are your UFC 277 recap. We've got not a good card coming up. Not a good card coming up. But I'm going to dive deep on it and see what I can find to be excited about. As per usual, the links are in the description below to my link tree, to my Twitter, to all that fun. The link tree has all the links you could want. Everything to my gaming stuff, everything to my podcasts. Check that out. And, give me the follow, the like, thumbs up, whatever it is on wherever you're watching. Let me know how things are going. And join up with the Discord if you just want to yell at me and have some sim fun and talk about mixed martial arts. So until somewhere around Thursday, I bid you adieu.